Welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping you to provide solutions for your horse training in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley, and with me is Mark Langley, a global leader in emotive horse training. This week, helping a horse in rehabilitation who needs to keep a good circle without chasing him while he's being lunged. The key to getting a horse into a float before an event. How do they even know it's for real, and why do they do it well every other time? And is there a point when some horses are just best left alone in their paddock with their friends? A lot to get through in this episode, so let's get straight into it. Have you ever had a horse that pulls back on you as you're trying to lead them up the trailer ramp? Even a slight raise of their head can be enough to pull our arms, and there's no way we can stop a horse pulling back if they really want to. But Kath from WA in Australia has a really interesting question on this. She's finding her horse only does this the first time she leads her up. And after this, she goes in and off the trailer, and she can be reloaded at any time without any problems. But the next day and the day after, she does that little pullback again. Kath would like to know, Mark, should she ignore it, or is this an issue that needs addressing?
It's an issue that needs addressing, and it basically any time the horse kind of pulls back to leading pressure, there's still a hole in our leading, especially if sometimes the horse goes on and sometimes it doesn't. It's so basically I come across a situation a lot where someone's loaded a horse quite successfully, and then they've been at an event that's been a bit more stressful for the horse, and because of the anxiety in the horse and its thoughts being elsewhere, the horse feels more unsafe going in the float. So then it blocks the leading and says, "Well, I don't want to go in the float." But the fact that it can block the lead rope tells me that there's still a big hole in the leading, and the leading needs to be tested under pressure.
Okay, so how should she go about tackling this one? Because she's doing a lot of groundwork and a lot of leading before she even approaches the float as a routine.
Yeah, so when you lead under pressure, there's a couple of sort of scenarios that you want to look at, and one is the speed of the lead rope and how quickly and brightly we can get that horse to lead up. Because a lot of times, and I watch people all the time at clinics, and I watch their little habits and their little routines and stuff, and I see them sometimes doing the leading that I'm trying to teach. But what I also notice is that they get in a bit of a sort of a set rhythm in the way they pull the lead rope, and I think to get a horse to lead really well, you have to actually show it that it can follow different lead speeds, and when you ride it, it'd be rein speeds. So basically, if the lead rope's going this slow, the horse goes this slow. If it goes faster, it goes faster. If it goes faster, again, it goes faster. And you can sort of stop it back up and bring it forward, almost seemingly quite abruptly, as in you go forwards, backwards, forwards, and the horse doesn't brace, doesn't pull back, and doesn't challenge it. So you're constantly adjusting your lead speeds, the amount of times you interrupt the horse for a back up or a forward, and also you want to be able to lower the horse's head down when you lead it, and jog it and lower its head down. I think you've got to really test all your leading skills, as I say, at different speeds, with more interruptions, and don't be in sort of a set pattern when you're doing it. And then the other thing that you do, you have to stimulate a neutral anxiety and then lead. So that's why sometimes you'll see me kind of shake a flag in front of a horse, or bang the float, or do something, kick a drum, roll a drum in front of the horse or something. So the horse goes, "Oh, what's that?" And then if the horse pulls back and doesn't come forward, I know I've still got work to do. So I still work on it. So I'll just keep working on it till, doesn't matter what happens in front of the horse comes forward, when I put a feel in that rope, and I get the leading, is really, really good. And then I'll go to the float, and then what I do at the float is I'll bring the horse's thoughts more to the float by banging the float and doing things, and it'll spook the horse a little bit, but it also takes its thoughts off the other horses as well. because there's something there in front of it that it's got to think about, and then I'll go back to the leading again. And it's just a bit more work on the lead rope. And then once the horse is not hiding the lead rope or pulling back, then you slow it down again and you go back to very slow and stop and stand and be very soft in that float. But you have to get rid of the pullback before you can sort of do all the backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and soften work, because while the pullback's still there, it only takes a sort of a spook inside the float and the horse pulls back out of it again, and then you could be back to square one because the horse has pulled out of the float and went, oh, that was really unsafe, and then you got to go about it all again. So pullback.
Okay, so how come though when she's pulling back when she goes towards the float, isn't it that she's anxious about going in that float and she's saying something about it and you're saying practice the. Can you explain how the two are linked?
Yeah, she's saying something about the float. Yeah, so the two are linked, but the thing about it is she's going in sometimes and sometimes not. So a lot of horses, when there's another thing in their mind or any other anxieties and stuff, they don't want to go into a steel box because that's going to make them feel a bit more unsafe. So it's not a horse-friendly environment afloat, and they would rather be not in that environment or with their friends. So when you're looking at really like claustrophobic horses, you have to look how much trauma the horse goes through when it's inside the float or traveling. Some horses travel and they can eat hay, and then and if you will look at them, they're not quite in the red zone, but they're not happy because it's not a great place, but they're not traumatized while they're traveling, and they're okay, and their muscles are reasonably loose, they're breathing okay, they can eat their hay okay. So if your horse is kind of traveling within its thresholds, then you're kind of okay. It just might be sort of saying, I don't want to go in there because I don't like it in there, but I'm not completely claustrophobic in there that it's terrifying. So that in that instance, you'll fix the leading, like I talked about, but then you'll still work on it being a lot softer in there if there's more room for that. For the really claustrophobic horses, you still have to fix their leading. You can't not go and do all that leading stuff. You have to have the leading just about perfect, because the more perfect the leading, the softer you can get them to sort of think forward, move forward, loosely move their feet, trust their decisions with their body. So for the claustrophobic horses, it's essential that the leading's good, because then you can say, step in slowly, step out slowly, step in, wait a little, step out, sniff the float, back out, and slowly get that horse used to being able to be loose and mobile in there, be able to control itself in there and stuff like that. And, you know, with claustrophobia, so many other things you can do, like long reining, having the badly out breaching ropes, so all those ropes around them, they're used to those sort of tight spaces. But with really good leading, you can slow it all down. And, you know, when a horse gets a hard thought, you can soften it up with the lead rope until it softens in that space. And you can do approach and retreat a bit with the leading, as in approach the float, go in the float a bit, out of the float, in a bit till it softens, move it backwards and forwards in there till it feels good in there, and spend more time on that sort of stuff. But without the leading, you can't do that either. So either way, you fix the leading. And if it's chronic claustrophobia, well, if it was chronic claustrophobia, Cass horse wouldn't be going in sometimes, and then sometimes not. It would probably be just not wanting to go in at all, because it'd be more worried about the float than what's happening elsewhere.
Okay, so what about this horse then? It's from Tammy, who's over in the States. She's a new subscriber, by the way. She says that she's loving the subscription. She has a mare and that gets on really well with one of her other geldings, and she's finding that she can load her quite beautifully whenever she needs to. She can go in and out thoughtfully, and she does it quite slowly, and she pays a lot of attention to how well she's leading. But when it's time to actually go to an event and it's for real, even though she's got the trailer ready and she's loaded all the equipment and she's very well prepared and organized and nothing's rushed, she finds that her mare doesn't want to go on. Somehow she just senses it and, yeah, is reluctant to go on. So she's pretty certain it could be buddy sourness. And she's finding that using the butt or the breeching rope in the end helps her to go on calmly, because she'll just refuse to go on with just lead rope pressure. So she wants to sort this out.
Well,
so any advice?
Well, but feeling that you're leaving your buddies and going in a float is obviously the cause of why she's not wanting to go in the float at that time. But the red flag that I see is, well, how come the breaching rope can encourage you to go in and not the lead rope? So it's obvious that the breaching rope has more power on her ability to, say, oh, I need to do that, than the lead rope has. So that just points me back to what I was talking about with Kath. It's also a leading problem, because if she led well enough, then technically the pole pressure would be the same as the breaching pressure. Now, it's just another example of it's an example of why people put a stick at the horse's hip to tap it to go in the float, or a breaching rope, is because a horse is moving away from an undesirable pressure from behind it, but it still doesn't know how to come forward softly off pole pressure. So if the breaching rope pressure gets the horse to go in, well, obviously the horse can submit to the breaching rope pressure, or be worried about it, the butt pressure enough that it actually goes, oh, I've got to worry about that more than the float, so I'm just going to move in. So there's many reasons why that breaching rope might get the horse to go in. It could be very sensitive around the butt and go, well, I don't like that behind me. I better go forward into the float. And if that's the reason the horse is going in, well, then the float will never get any better, because the breaching rope was worrying enough to get the horse to go in. But if it was just the horse led better off the breaching rope, then it just tells me it leads better off the breaching rope. So that means it doesn't lead well off a halter. So you've got to fix the leading. So go back to all the things I said to Kath in that question about the speeding up the lead, slow down the lead, make sure you can lead under pressure. Make sure also your leading has to fix the what you call buddy sour, or separation anxiety. So when I pull on the lead rope, the horse lets go of a thought. I can direct a thought, so I can take a horse off one thought and onto another thought, because that's what leading's all about. So if your horse keeps thinking about another horse when you pull on the rope, then it's not leading, because leading is, say if a horse was thinking backwards, you put leading pressure on that pole, the horse should think forwards, which means it was thinking backwards to its mate. The leading pressure changed that thought, which means now the horse has let go of that thought for a bit. So when I'm at clinics, there's obviously buddy sour horses or separation anxiety, in horses. And, some of the lessons I'm doing, because their mate's over there and they're over here in the arena, they're getting anxious and they want to be with their mate. So I might pop a flag, or I might pick up a feel on the rope to say, you don't have to think about that. And then very soon they're not thinking about that other horse and they're centered there. So that's the same process you're going to go through your horse, away from your other two horses, and also near the float, and do all the things like I said before about what I told Kath to do, about all the leading lessons that you need to do to get the horse really good. So if you put that all into place, then the horse should load with the pole pressure and not need the breaching rope pressure.
Okay, all down to leading then. So let's go to a leading question. This from Megan. She's got a horse that she's had. She knows that it's been very resistant to moving forward, both on the ground and ridden, ever since it was quite young. She knows he had a troubled start, and humans have probably contributed to his current mental state. Now, despite her efforts, her journey she's found with this horse has been really inconsistent and quite challenging. She hasn't been able to properly unlock his mind and progress forward. So have you got any tips, though, for getting this horse to move forward, obviously lacking in confidence and desire?
So it's both under saddle and leading, this one, isn't it? It's kind of like it's just not moving forward, not searching, things like that. It's tough, those horses, because I guess the tough thing about those horses is that they're the sort of horses that if they go to a trainer, they're the ones that are put in around you and chased to get moving, make them frightened enough to move away from danger. That then what happens with that, then when you get them back, every time you do something, they think they're going to get chased. So they actually, movement becomes a fearful thing because they had to make them frightened enough to get them motivated. So this is the hard thing about these horses. With these types of horses, I still will create a certain level of caution and also make them feel a little bit stimulated, like they're a little bit in danger, because sometimes it's that lack of anything that makes them kind of, I'm just not searching, or I'm shut down. So, and even with those really shut down horses, I may do something big to go, oh, what was that? I need to do something. I need to search. It's what you do with that anxiety that either makes them soft or stay anxious and worried. And that's the hard bit, I suppose. So, if it's a shutdown horse, it's not searching. Like I used to tell a story about, well, I'm going to sort of I'm going to start doing clinics for shutdown horses, because I've just got some DNA from a saber-toothed tiger, and I've actually went to a lab and I've got myself a pet saber-toothed tiger, and I just get all these people with shut down horses and I line them all up and I just lead my saber-toothed tiger past all the horses. And as the saber-toothed tiger walks past all the horses, this horse opens up, this horse opens up, this horse opens up, this horse opens up. And I go, there you go. I've just opened up all your horses. Thank you. See you later. So, so what that sort of scenario is horses have shut down to lots of white noise, all sorts of things in their environment, like people do, but there's always something that'll wake a horse up. So saber-toothed tiger is like a neutral anxiety, but if the saber-toothed tiger woke the horse up and I was there with the horse to say, hey, why don't you come over here and lead with me? The horse goes, thanks, I might come with you on that lead rope. That's a good idea. But it was that saber-toothed tiger that actually was enough to get that horse to go, I'm a little bit in danger. I need to do something. And what does a horse do when it's in danger? It follows the feel of a herd to safety. That's back in their, that's in their genetics to do that. It's our responsibility to be that place that we can lead a horse into a safe place or a soft feeling. So when it comes to horses with no motivation or anything like that, I may do something big enough to get them to go blink, blink. I'm concerned and arouse them and get them thinking, I don't know what to do. And then I go, well, why don't you do this? And I might just pick up a lead and move them a little bit and make sure that I only pull the lead rope when they're aroused. And then to get that forward in that horse, then eventually you sort of do something and then pick up a lead and lead that horse until they go, oh, righto, I'm aroused and I'm leading. And actually I'm back to learning how to lead, because this is the pressure that I'm awake to and I can feel it, I can sense it. And now I'm remembering it and I'm learning. Some horses, I bring the awareness to the lead rope again. Like there's a lot of horses at clinics. I'll pick up a lead and they're just completely, I don't even feel that because they've been, banged and bumped and prodded and they're just immune to it. So sometimes I might have to get big enough with that lead rope to wake them up. It could be to say, wake up. Here I am. So, or here the lead rope is, so, and then start to lead them. And then once you've got the leading really good, they're blinking, thinking, they're motivated. And then, you take that under saddle. So then you put them in the long range, you back them up, you move them around in the long range. Then when you get to riding, you do your one range starts and start to lead them into movement. And a belly rope to get them aware of the rib cage pressure and so forth until every one of those things they can feel again. But you don't do a lot with them. You don't use, you pick up a rein, get them to steer, pick up a rope, get them to lead, but you don't keep doing stuff all the time like hammer, 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 hammer until they go dull again.
Going back to that idea of the saber-toothed tiger, though, you can't just introduce a tiger all the time. I can understand it works for that moment, but then you want to carry on with the lesson. What if they just go dull again? What's the purpose of continuously wanting? Why can't they just sort of open them up? But why do you have to continuously scare them?
Because they'll just drop out again. So there's only a couple of ways to arouse a horse, really, and that's through curiosity and caution. That's the two real main ways of arousing a horse. And curiosity. So that's why people go to clicker training and things like that, and food, because food arouses a horse. To search, I suppose, and then by withholding the food, you create anxiety, and then they do something, and then you give them the food. But really, at the end of the day, when a horse has lost interest in searching, it's hard to motivate it to move and think about what it's doing. So you've just got to get its sensitivity up enough for long enough for it to learn a little bit and follow a feel. And then what happens is that overrides the understanding that it learnt when it was awake. So it's not introducing a saber-toothed tiger. Once you can wake a horse up and it wakes up and is a bit aroused, it's when you see it drop out, you only have to go, that's not available. Like, just imagine me, I just clap my hands, but imagine you were just about to drop off the chair and fall asleep, and I go, that's not available, and you wake up and go blink, blink, blink again. So really that's what's happening. You're not just keeping the horse scared with saber-toothed tigers, you're just saying, don't go there. And it's just a quick, snap out of it. And then the horse stays aroused for a while they're awake, and then you do something with them. And then, as I say, once they're in the green zone, which I call the green zones, that thinking aroused zone that they learn in, for long enough, they start to go back in that space again, because you reset. Like, in my experience, all the shutdown and all the unmotivated horses I've seen, I've had horses that I've done 3 days. Like, one particular horse was at a clinic. It was a cob horse. He was so dull and so unmotivated, and he was kind of started by a trainer. But he, when she picked him up, they had to kind of pretty well, have someone with a stick on the ground to keep him going. So I spent 3 days teaching that horse how to lead. So on the 4th day, she could steer, walk, and trot him around the arena with soft, blinky eyes and ears floating. But what she said every single day, that she kind of took him back to his yard after a session, because I only did the sessions with him because he was really stuck. She said, I noticed he's noticing everything now. His ears are moving. He's looking around in his environment, and every day he became more of a natural horse again. So by the last day, he was a horse. He was turned into a horse again. And he always was a horse. He just had the horse taken out of him. So you don't have to keep scaring a horse every day, because you rejig the part of them that shuts down, and then they go back to being the horse. And that's what they wanted to be in the first place, because that's what they were born to be. So they like being a horse. They don't want to be shut down.
It's interesting that a horse can be shut down away from the learning environment, even, and that when you whatever you're doing
They go back to their paddock, like it. Yeah. No, I've seen horses that people say, he's shut down, and then after I've done a bit of a few sessions with ones that are really kind of stuck, they say, oh, he sat down in the stable and had a bit of a roll, and he's doing this and doing that, and it's just you're resetting their nervous system in a sense, because there's something in what we do with horses, and I call shutdown white noise syndrome. Too much white noise, too much stimulation without clarity, not being able to act on your thoughts, and then eventually you just dull out and just go, turn into sort of a, I'm not going to do anything. But once you reset them, they just go back to what they were when they were young.
It's amazing that you can have such a difference change that they are that pliable. But it sounds like a really hard thing to do. And, she, Megan calls it unlocking his mind. She's found that really hard to be able to do it. You said, on that particular clinic, you were the one that did it. It was, not something, I know it's not something
The hardest,
that you can sort of show people because it is very technical. But Megan would also, like to know, is there a point where it just becomes too hard? Maybe, people aren't you. Is it too hard for them? Maybe too hard for that horse? Is there a point where you've ever thought, Mark, that the kindest option for that horse is just best left with his paddocks paddock friends just left to be alone?
I started to learn how to ski a little while ago, and I really love it. In my mind, I go down the slopes like I saw the people in the Winter Olympics. In reality, I don't. And I won't ever get to that at that stage. I think I've seen so many people at clinics that have really done well with tough horses and made some massive changes that I realised that with the right information, there's so much hope out there for people to be able to make a shift in a horse. But in some instances, there's sometimes that the amount of technique and work involved sometimes to keep a horse in the green zone and make it a happy horse that you want to do like see some people just want to go out on a trail ride, have a horse that loads easy, does all this stuff, but to do all that stuff you have to have a horse that's in a good mindset, that's soft and ticks all those boxes for what you want. And if you've got a really hard shut down horse that keeps dropping away, then sometimes you think, well, this horse may be above my pay grade, and actually this one may be suited more to not what I want for it. And that is the reality there, that, you can improve a horse and give it an enriched life in the herd and just doing its basics around your farm or whatever, because it's not shut down, it's not trauma, and it's not the bottom of the pecking order. But there's sometimes that, to make it that really soft horse that you want to feel safe on and ride and go and do stuff on, maybe you need a horse that's more suited to that and easier to achieve with that, because then you're not spending all your time trying to be a horse master just to go and trail ride with your friends. And I think that's where I see a lot of people there. They're using every skill that they've learned. They're going on the net, they're going to clinics just to get a horse that they feel safe just to get on and ride around their arena, let alone go out. And I'm like, well, that's a lot of effort, and it's really good that you're doing it. But, is it achievable? It may be achievable, but it depends on the person's spare time that they got with the horse, their skill set, their awareness, the whole bunch of things. So some horses, I think, maybe are best left to sort of have a happy life in a paddock, because I've seen people where they've just got worn out and they give up horses completely because it was too hard. If they just had an easier horse, they might have just got that desire back and enjoyed it and got their skill set up, and then, that makes sense. So every horse can be helped, but sometimes it can be too much to chew.
Every horse can be helped. So in your experience, though, for you personally, have you ever come across horses that you felt, no, that one is just actually in the paddock now? For you, have you ever?
Yeah, I have. No, I've had horses that, see, I'm picky. Like I'm picky. I'd be like, I wouldn't own that horse. I wouldn't, not that horse that you're talking about. But I don't know that horse. But there's horses I say I wouldn't work with that horse. I don't have enough time. Simple, because I'm here to help everyone enrich the lives of their horse and give them knowledge. If I would choose to own that horse, I would choose not to own that horse, because I've been around enough horses to know the exact horse that would suit me and what I want to do with it, without so I don't have to be Mark the clinician to enjoy my horse. I don't want to have to use I don't want to have to use every skill that I've used on all the traumaed horses that I've learned, all the things I've learned over the years on traumaed horses, just to ride a horse for myself. So that's my choice, and I believe, which is, I don't know, it's a bit old school this, but everyone's breeding horses. They're breeding horses for colour. They're breeding it for this. They're breeding it for that. They're breeding it for this, for that, and the other. But where is the old school sort of breeding for temperament and conformation? I think we have a responsibility to breed horses that mentally will survive in this world, because this world, the world's, more people, more everything. I think we have a responsibility to breed horses that cope better than other horses, because there's enough bad training out there that's going to make it hard, let alone struggling from the start. And the other thing, there's a lot of good horses bred in bad environments. So then by the time they've actually got to training, they're already sort of struggling with life. And I've met plenty of those, and they're really hard to rejig too.
But given enough time, every horse can be helped.
You can help every horse, but like the old saying goes, like, I shouldn't say, this is probably a bad way of explaining it, because I don't think you could class any horse as pig's ears, but there's an old saying, you can't make a silk purse out of pig's ears. And that's probably the wrong saying, because I'm not calling a horse, but there's horses for courses, and some horses suit a certain life. Other horses can cope with a different type of life, and I think you can help every horse be better in the environment that they're in, and you can help them be an open horse that, in their ability and in their mindset, they can be happy. You can actually get some horses that you thought couldn't be ridden to be ridden and actually be a soft horse. But sometimes some people are working with a horse that's going to be just too hard to get there. But they can enrich that horse's life, so it's not sitting in the paddock sort of half shut down, broken, still scared of people, tough with the farrier, all that sort of stuff. So I think no matter what horse you got, it's your responsibility to help it feel better in the life that it's in. But if you have an aim and a goal for that horse, it may not suit your aim and goal.
Moving on to the next question from Jo. She's in Victoria in Australia. She's got a warm blood, a lot bigger than she is. A year-old warm blood who's got kissing spine. She is doing lots of rehabilitation, lots of lunging. The lunging is sort of to do with the stretching down, and she has to do big circles and small circles and bending in a slow jog. Now, she's having a little bit of problem with it because he hates being chased. She hates chasing him. So she's sort of trying to use your method to teach him to follow the rope or the rein in the circle, which was starting to work, but she is finding she's having a little bit problem with the technicality of it. So he's leaning on the rope or the rein, and he's sort of refusing to go out without being chased, with the whip. He'll go into what also she calls a talk, where he trots with the back legs and he walks with the front. So he's not using his front end and he's not lifting through the wither. But if she concentrates on the front legs, then he'll slow down in either or one of his back legs. So just bearing in mind the sort of the size difference between the two of them too, she's finding that he's coming in on her. He's a really big horse. How does she get him to stay out, not lean on this rope? And how does she get him to canter out on a bigger circle when he really doesn't want to? And he's very good at shutting things out. He will trot beside her if she trots with him, but she can't keep up with the canter. So she's also finding he's more willing to do the exercises under saddle than he is on the ground. But she still needs to do an awful lot more lunge work before she can get back under, on his back. So she'd love to get to one of your clinics, but you're all booked out. So have you got any tips for Jo?
My first tip is if a vet told me to do flying lead changes under saddle on a horse because it's going to make my horse better, it's going to take me this many months before I can do a flying lead change. So I'm not going to do what the vet says because I can't. I can't do what the vet says if I can't do a flying lead change. Don't go and try and do what the vet says and teach your horse to lead at the same time. That's kind of what's happening by the sounds of it. So you're trying to do circles, you're trying to do all these exercises that vet said to do, but your horse is having trouble leading. So the biggest struggle I have with people at clinics is when I say do the lead lunging on a circle. They do lead lunging on a circle, but they might need to do about 2 weeks of the basics of leading that lead up to that, and the basics of awareness and the basics of personal space and all those things. So the vet's asking you to do something that your horse doesn't have a foundation enough to do. So the only way you can achieve it is by chasing it. But most vets accept that the people are just going to get a lunge stick out in a round pen and send their horse out and say, your horse can lunge, because a lot of people think that lunging is something you do with a horse, not something you have to develop and train into a horse. This is the problem. So don't worry about not circling your horse for a week, because it's already damaged. It's already got the problems. By not doing the circles, you're not going to ruin the horse, because it's out in the paddock for longer than you're going to circle it for, just wandering around doing its own thing. So you're not going to do any damage by not circling and stretching and all that sort of stuff. You're only going to damage the horse if you start riding it while it's got kissing spine and things like that, and doing, so the work that the vet wants you to do will help the horse, but not doing it's not going to damage the horse. So if not doing it's not going to damage the horse, don't panic and go, I've got to do this exercise every day. I've got to circle horse every day and do this stretching exercise and all that. Go back to the foundation and say, what do I need to know to do these exercises? So the first thing I would do is go online, and some of the videos on personal space and awareness, where you just carry a flag and say, this is my space. Start to being soft around my space. For a week, you could just walk around and that horse knows exactly where you're going, where your intention is. If you stop, it stops, knowing that it doesn't just keep crowding your space. If you turn your shoulders and go in a certain direction, it can look in that direction, go in that direction. So work a week just with the flag, maybe just a visual lesson, not chasing it around, but just saying, this is my bubble, this is my bubble, this is my personal space. And when the horse is aware of your personal space, and then suddenly, you've got that bigger presence and the horse knows not to push, then you might do some leading lessons, and you might start to say, lead up a little bit. And you might use that flag and bang it a little bit, so the horse is like, oh, I'm searching, and then it might step up a bit, and you might have to lead it for another 2 weeks till it just can just walk up and jog up a little bit on that lead, and that's all, and then back up a little bit. You might have to do that, just basic leading, so the horse is nice and loose in the lead rope. And you might do some just lead and walk past lessons, so the horse can walk past you without pushing on you, and just walk out on a loose line and just wander and then turn around and come back, like I do with the baby horses. Those sorts of things you might have to practice, almost like you're restarting a horse. And then when the horse can start to do those things, then you're close to thinking about sending it out on a lunge line and bringing it around, okay? But just remember, by the time you get to that stage of sending it out on a circle and doing the stretching exercises, and another great lesson is just teach it to lead up and lower its head while you're leading, and lift its head while you're leading, lower its head while you're leading, and all that sort of stuff. That's all going to still help your horse. And then maybe in 3 weeks, you might be able to sort of just jog your horse past, and then and then because you've walked it out on a long line and it's turned around and come back, it can jog out on a long line and turn around. And then you can start looking at the videos like the spotty horse where I'm doing the lead lunging. But I spent a week with that spotty horse teaching him to lead before I even thought about that. And he already knew how to lead, but I had to get him to lead better to even think about that. So, and that's, everyone comes to me, the vet says they've got to do this. And I'm like, well, the vet's not training your horse. They just say that your horse needs to do that with its body. But to do that, you need more training. So just focus on the training. And then when the horse softens up, you have a softer horse doing those exercises. So the chance of fixing it is a lot higher.
Yes, they make it an end goal. That makes sense. All right. Thank you so much, Mark, for all of your answers today. A lot in this session. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. More questions. Until then, see you then.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, everybody.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it, share it, or send us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. And if making a change in your horse appeals to you, Mark offers his direct support and a diverse learning platform. Head to marklangley.com.au and grab your 7-day free trial.